Okay students, I think we can start the class, right? Am I audible? Bhalke shuna paisa, board dekha paisa nai? Okay, everything is clear, right? So today we are going to start with a new chapter that is called as the living world, right? In this chapter, what we need to study? Ki poriba? Tumaleke to ebar porhi ahisa agote, right? So first of all, this chapter is the first chapter. It seems to be very easy, and obviously it's easy. Nothing very complicated, but I think you have noticed that jedi kunubai need to obviously disa june disa neatot ebar living world questions ahise nai? Ahise nai living world questions? You all have applied, I mean appeared for NEET, right? So living world question ahise nai ebar? Na nazanu? Aya ki nahi? I think so. Huh? किसके ऊपर? प्रोटिस्टा लिविंग वर्ल्ड में है, बायोलॉजिकल क्लासिफिकेशन में है. लिविंग वर्ल्ड की क्वेश्चन है इसलिए. Very good, very good. Yes, it was about the Housefly family, right? You have a chart in your NCERT book, right, about the different organisms, their families, right? So heikono uporte classic question ahise, tar pora maximum ahe, and from that chart, the most commonly asked question is about the housefly and mango anacardiaceae family. Hetur upor question ahe maximum aru tar pisot housefly. Okay, let's talk about this world. In this chapter, what we are going to read, we are going to talk about what is living. Right? So living world boli kwa loge we have to talk about the living organisms that is present in this earth, right? Next is, together with that, we will be talking about something called as a little bit about biodiversity, right? Hey term 2 ase, kintu I think you all know the biodiversity is totally a different chapter in your second year portion. So details about it we'll be doing it during that time when we are going to discuss. Yate just duta ba tinta line ase. Living world to enuka eta chapter jot niki almost entire contents of botany okoman information living world di dise, right? It's just the introductory chapter. So we will see the reproduction or okoman information ase, biodiversity or okoman information ase, right? So taxonomy, hierarchy, taxonomical hierarchy gute khini bostu okoman information ase. So chapter to include ki kora ase? So yate first ki ase that we need to talk about what is living. Aru jetia what is living ko yar underot ami ketaman point porhim jeneke I think if you have read the PDF you will have an idea. PDF kon porhisa ne okoman? Ki ase aru? So contents khini prothomate jani lobo lagibo je chapter to ase ki no. Right? So this is the first one. Second is we have something called as nomenclature. Third, taxonomic hierarchy, and fourth, yes, yar uporiyo kiba ase niki? So etu chapter ki ase, this is the content that we need to study, right? We'll start with what is living. Ekdom general type, basic details na lage. Living boli kole obviously we make a comparison between the living and the non-living, right? And these are the things, biodiversity, very few lines about biodiversity, key portion lagibo. If you have noticed, there is a pie diagram. Biodiversity tumalke already porisa ebar. That a pie diagram ketaman ase that denotes what? The number of organisms je kuntu besi ase. If you are talking about the plant kingdom, which group of plant occupies the maximum area or maximum ki ase. If you are talking about animals also, maximum kuntu type of animals ase, right? All those pie chart you need to study. That is within this chapter also, because questions might come from living world also, it might come from biodiversity also about that pie diagram. Next is need to classification, few points, and obviously taxonomics and systematics. Ekita ami details of korim. Next is nomenclature. What is nomenclature? Giving a specific name to an organism, that is called as nomenclature. Whenever we talk about giving a scientific name, what is the type of nomenclature that we follow? It is always binomial nomenclature. Binomial nomenclature is the only nomenclature that is scientifically accepted all over the world, right? Binomial nomenclature e ki koi? The scientific eta organism of the scientific naam dibo lage, tetiahole obviously it should have two parts, no? Ki part asile? Binomial nomenclature consists of how many parts? It consists of two parts, the generic name and the specific epithet, right? Or the species name. Duta part of hobo lagibo, tetiahe tak ami scientific name hisabe accept korim. In this chapter, what we will read something extra. Extra khini ki not necessary je okol binomial nomenclature ase. We have something called as a trinomial nomenclature. We have something called as polynomial nomenclature also. What is trinomial? এটা নামত যদি তিনটা পার্ট থাকে তেতিয়াহলে তাক আমি কি বুলি কম trinomial. Question কি আহে, what is the third part of a trinomial nomenclature? Because binomial we know genus and species name, the comprise of the binomial. Trinomial বুলি কলে তাতো আৰু এটা পার্ট থাকিব, right? So third part to কি হয়? Next we have polynomial. As the name suggests, polynomial মানে কি? Then the name consists of more than 3 parts, obviously. It will be a long name, right? Aru bahut bilak parts take. This name that is included in the polynomial nomenclature, tat ki kore? The entire name gives a description about the plant. Not only about the plant, but also about the habitat. Kot grow korise, kenekwa condition of grow korise, tar flower kenekwa, tar inflorescence kenekwa. Each and every information kot thakibo in that name itself. So no doubt polynomial বুলি কলে বহুত বিলাক parts থাকিব, and to remember a polynomial name and plus to give a polynomial name, obviously it's not very easy, right? Okman tiresome hobo no, bostu to binomial to jiman easy hobo, polynomial to himan easy no hoy, it's very complicated also, and that is one of the reason why polynomial nomenclature is not accepted. আমি কি accept কৰো? Binomial nomenclature. Ar binomial nomenclature বুলি কোৱা লগে লগে the scientist behind, credit to কাৰ যায়? Careless Linnaeus. So we have to remember about careless Linnaeus. Next is binomial nomenclature. Aru ki monot rakhibo lagibo je jeneke teneke to naam eta di dibo nwara. Can you give a name just out of anything? You have to follow certain rules of binomial nomenclature. So hey, rules, 7 rules, 6 rules, whatever it's given in your NCERT book, we have to study about that. Next is we have taxonomic hierarchy. Taxonomic hierarchy. First the word hierarchy. Hierarchy mane ki arranging. No, increasing order, decreasing order, ami je eta step ke arrange koru, that is what is called as hierarchy. Taxonomic hierarchy. What exactly we are talking about? Taxonomic hierarchy ki thake? The organism eta sabotse bhalke poribo lagile eta proper ta classification lagibo. It has to be arranged in particular sections, no? Hei to bostu ke ami ki boli kon taxonomic hierarchy. Yar bhitorot ki pore? Just starting from highest point of taxonomic hierarchy ki hoy? Kingdom. Lowest point of taxonomic hierarchy ki hoy? Species. Species, genus, order, eneke, that is what is called as taxonomic hierarchy. And next, taxonomical aids. To do a taxonomic study or to know about the organism properly, ami eta organism supposed to be discover korisa ba eta organism we want to study, hei bostu tur upor information lobo lagile ami kisuman bostur help lo. And what is help? Help is nothing but aids. When we are talking about this taxonomical aids, NCERT book konon ba tumalukor contents ot ki taxonomical aids ase? এটা অর্গানিজমৰ টেক্সোনমিক স্টাডি কৰিব লাগিলে আমি কিছুমান বস্তুৰ হেল্প ল'ব লাগিব। সেই হেল্প যাৰ লওঁ, that is called as taxonomic aids. And what are the taxonomic aids that are mentioned in your book? কি আছে? লিভিং ওয়ার্ল্ড পঢ়িছা তোমালোকে? taxonomic aid হিচাপে কিহৰ হেল্প ল'বা? এটা অৰ্গানিজম দেখিছা, How does the organism look like? You want to know about the organism. Kabar help lom. Kar help lom? Kar help lom? নাজানা নে পাহৰিলো নেকি নে বুজি পোৱা নাই বস্তুটো ওকে তোমালোকৰ এটা কোৱেশ্চন দিছো হে কোৱেশ্চনটো তোমালোকৰ একো আইডিয়া নাই হে কোৱেশ্চনটো জানিবলৈ কি কৰিবা suppose I give you a question তোমালোকে কোৱেশ্চনটো কৰিব পৰা নাই you want to know about the question কি কৰিবা কবাৰ পৰা হেল্প লবা নলুৱা কৰ পৰা লবা books of Praloba. So books to ki buli kom. I mean aid buli kobo parone nwaro. Right? So similarly, if you want to know about an organism, tetiahale amar kisuman specific books ase and those books could also be considered as a taxonomic aid. And when we talk about books, I think you have come across certain words called as flora, manual, catalog. Right? It interpret to question ahiye thake. So those are nothing but books. Our hey books bilakor pra ami ki kom will take the information about the organism. Not only books, apart from books, we have botanical gardens also. If you are talking about a plant, we have zoological parks. If you are talking about an animal, right? Apart from this, yeah, very good. Apart from that, we also have something called as a herbaria, right? Herbaria ki hoy? Yeah, we have museums, zoological park. Yes, very good. And we have museums also. Ebilak bostur pora ami ki koribo paro. We can gather information about the organism, and so these are considered as taxonomical aids. So taxonomical aids or bhitor ki ase? Botanical garden, zoological park, museum, right? Next, herbarium. Next, we have something called as keys, right? And then we have certain types of books. Jor bhitor flora, manual, catalog, etc. Is it clear? So etia a chapter to ami ki porhim okoman clear hoise ne? So this is the content we are going to study. So let's start talking about the first one, no? What is living? Jihetu living world or kotha koisu, what is living? Eta organism living buli ketia kom? Normally living buli ami ketia kom? If you want to give the answer according to the book, then you have to talk about defining characters and not defining characters, right? Jehetu living world porhisa, I think you have heard about those two. Defining, non-defining khunisan nai. Pasta characteristic dia ase NCERT bookot. Tar bitorot duta not defining and 3 of them are defining. We ki asile? Growth asile, reproduction asile, metabolism asile, consciousness asile, right? So kisuman ki hoy defining character, kisuman ki hoy not defining character. So we'll go to that first. So talking about living and talking about life, PDF kon sua, we are not going to write it, right? Life or ki diya se, it is nothing but a reaction. What is life? It is a unique complex reaction, right? Next, yate kisuman information diya se, bios meaning, right? The term biology originates from, it's very important, you have to know about Lamarck, right? Biology word to kune disile, it has originated from a Greek word and it was coined by or given by Lamarck. Now talking about Lamarck or information kini yate nai, kintu Lamarck boli kole one specific contribution of Lamarck you need to remember. Kuntu contribution or kotha koi aso? Lamarck porhisa no, Lamarck or kotha to hunisa. Lamarck or kuntu contributions of what's greatest that we often talk about. That's the first question. Second question, Lamarck juntu bostu koisile, that was obviously not correct. So he was corrected by another scientist. So Lamarck kole hei duta extra point ami janiboi lagibo. Lamarck ki koisile? Something about acquired characters. Remember that the neck of the giraffe. Porhisa no? Porhisila nai? Neck of the giraffe ki koisile? যে নেকটো যেহেতু দীঘল হৈ গৈ আছে এই দীঘল হোৱা ক্যাৰেক্টাৰটো it goes from generation to generation. So what did Lamarck say? Lamarck said that acquired characters go from one generation to another generation. Is the statement correct? It is not correct. হয় জানো আমি লাইফ টাইমত যোনটো বস্তু একুৱায়াৰ কৰোঁ সেইটো কিবা জিন্সত ইফেক্ট কৰে নেকি? এইটো জিন্সত ইফেক্ট নকৰে. চ' হিজ ষ্টেটমেণ্ট ৱাজ ৰং. এণ্ড ৰং বুলি ক'লেতো নহ'ব. দেৰ শুড বি ছামৱান হু শুড প্ৰুভ দেট. চ' ইউ নিড টু ন' দ্য চাইণ্টিষ্ট হু হেজ প্ৰুভড লেমাৰ্ক ৰং. কোনে কৰিছিলে? Lamarck, what did Lamarck say? Acquired characters are heritable. But that sentence is wrong. Who proved him wrong? The one who has conducted an experiment on mice. Nigoni report korisile eta experiment? Ki naam asile? August Weismann. Right? What did August Weismann do? He has taken a mice. Right? আৰু সেই মাইচটো ৰিপ্ৰডিউচ কৰিছিলে কিমানটা জেনেৰেশ্যনছ পঢ়িছিলে 22টা জেনেৰেশ্যনছ পঢ়িছিলে এণ্ড হোৱাট ডিড হি ডু হি কাট দ্য টেইলছ অফ দ্য মাইচ ৰাইট ইভেন ইন স্পাইট অফ কাটিং টেইলছ ফৰ 22 জেনেৰেশ্যনছ অন দ্য 23rd জেনেৰেশ্যন অলছ' দ্য মাইচ ৱাজ বৰ্ন উইথ আ টেইল চ' আল্টিমেটলি ইট ৱাজ ডিছকাছ এণ্ড ইট ৱাজ ছেড ডেট একুৱায়াৰ্ড কেৰেক্টাৰ্ছবিলাক কেতিয়াও হেৰিটেবল নহয় right it cannot be carried from generation to generation so since we have talked about Lamarck ei duta point question ahe je Lamarck e ki koisile acquired characters opor koisile second Lamarck ok kune bhul buli koisile it was Weismann Lamarck August Weismann okay right August Weismann was the one who proved Lamarck wrong or Lamarck e ki koisile acquired characters is carried from one generation to the other generation okay next is the term biology hetu buji paiso when we are talking about biology we have to talk about the contributors also certain scientists play an important role maximum information about the various scientists and the workers আমি কোড ডিসকাস কৰিম biological classification বা next chapter ত আমি বহুত কিজন scientistor ওপৰত details ত ডিসকাস কৰিম right around 8 to 9 of the scientists and workers আমি details জানিব লাগিব তাৰ ভিতৰত কোন আছে Whittaker আছে right Carus Linnaeus আছে Bohin বুলা scientist এজনো আছে Carl Wood বুলা scientist এজনো আছে so এই গুটেখিনি details আমি next chapter ত কৰিম as of now we have certain informations about Aristotle and Theophrastus right jetiai ami primitive contributors or information পঢ়ো primitive contributors mane the first who has worked on this field right tetiai amar Aristotle Theophrastus eblak naam monot pore right Aristotle why he is important because obviously he is considered as a father of biology right father of biology and obviously father of zoology kintu Aristotle ok father of botany boli nokoy so if the question is asked who is the father of botany tetia Aristotle likhile to obviously wrong hobo no to answer ki hobo Theophrastus right so this is the information that you have to study father of biology jot likha ase that's an important point mark it down after Aristotle junto sentence likha ase tumalkor pdf ot hetu kati diba it has no meaning I don't know what he has written tat khali likhiba the word botany please write it down the word botany originated from the Greek word botany originated from the Greek word right sir the word botany has originated from the Greek word botan aru ei tar meaning ki hoy grass or pasture grass or pasture Father of botany, তলত লিখিছে Theophrastus. লিখিছা নেকি তুমি? হা? স্পেলিংটো হৈছে THEO, Theophrastus spelling. Right? So Theophrastus information dia ase, a student of Aristotle, he was a Greek botanist. Ketiaba question to ki ahibo pare, each and every sentence is important. Question keneke ahibo pare. Aristotle, the most common sentence that we know is that he is the father of botany. That is the most common line that we know about Aristotle, right? Apart from that, not necessarily the sobotse common line to upor a question ahibo. Ketia ahibo pare, Aristotle Greek asil ne, British asil ne, French asil ne, ki asile, right? So that type of a question is also asked. So you need to remember the word Greek. Right? Ketiaba okman complex kori pelai jeneke for example I think you all have studied the cell theory, you know, cell theory porisa, cell theory kune propose korisile, so pahoila no, so khai finish mane you all have all digested. Sheldon and Sean, right? Sheldon and Sean ejon botanist asil, ejon zoologist asil. So question hetu ahe kun botanist asil, kun zoologist asil. So what does it mean? It means that very simple informations also you cannot ignore. Right? Hetu upor marks booster. Oh, obviously tenika questions ahe. So Greek word to monot rakhiba. Right? Next, Theophrastus ki korisel, discovered about 500 plants, medicinal plants, food plants, etc. He considered morphological characters for classification. So এইবিলাক যোনবিলাক primitive workers asile, Aristotle hawk, Theophrastus hawk, এওঁলোকে কি কৰিছিলে, they have tried to study about an organism. And if you're talking about Theophrastus, so obviously he has studied about a plant, right? While studying about a plant, he has gathered certain informations, and according to those informations, he had tried to classify that organism. অকল পঢ়িলেইটো নহব, তাক এটা proper sequence arrange কৰিব লাগিব, and that is what is called as classification. So this classification is based on, means Theophrastus is a plant dal পঢ়িছিলে, সেই plant dalor কি characters পঢ়িছিলে. You have to remember, whenever we talk about ancient workers, they always studied the morphological feature of an organism. Have you come across the words called as artificial classification, natural classification and phylogenetic classification? 18 word kunisan nai? Kunisa no agote? So artificial, natural aru phylogenetic. Ancient scientists bilak kihor logot confined ho asile, always confined with artificial system of classification, right? And as time proceeded, that ki hol natural ahile, nature pisot sobotse advanced ki phylogenetic ho gol, right? So Aristotle hawk, Theophrastus hol, these are key ancient contributors. Tahate on the basis of what classify korisile, on the basis of morphological characteristics. Etia jodi question ahe je Aristotle and Theophrastus are associated with which system of classification? Answer ki diba? Out of the three, you have to choose one. It is obviously the artificial system of classification. So artificial word to hunile, you have to remember that this is a classification, this is a study based on morphology only. Right? Only morphology. That word is very important. Only morphology. Pisole ki hoise the morphology logot, together with morphology, some other characteristics were also considered. For example, anatomy. Right? Bahiror features kini to salu, bhitoror features kini study korilu. That is anatomy. Tar pisot ki hobo je we have studied the metabolism, the physiology also. Keneke cell to respire korise, keneke cell to digest korise, plant animal duitar beleg beleg, right? So basic eblak information etialeke porisu, right? Morphology consider korisu, anatomy consider korisu, physiology consider korisu, ecology consider korisu. If we consider all these four, that system of classification is called as natural, right? Only morphology is artificial. A sarita jodi consider koru, natural. What is phylogenetic? Tinta type of classification ase no, artificial, natural and phylogenetic. So natural lot ami gom palu je ei sarita bostu consider kore, artificial lot okol morphology consider kore, phylogenetic studies ot ki consider kore. Phylogenetic classification, it talks about phylogeny of an organism. What is phylogeny? Phylogeny ki bostu? Evolution. Right? Family tree, me, my father, my father's father, his father, সেইটো যদি আমি সিকুৱেন্সটো ষ্টাডি কৰোঁ তাক আমি কি বুলি ক'ম ইভলিউশ্যন নকম জানো ৰাইট আমি ক'ৰ পৰা ইভলভ হৈছে সেই পইণ্টটোৰ পৰা যদি ষ্টাডি কৰা right so that is what is called as a phylogenetic classification so phylogenetic classification is based on what it is based on all the features mane morphology anatomy physiology ecology evolution right only morphology artificial apart from evolution bakibur sob consider korise evolution consider kora nai teta tak ki boli kom natural gutei bila consider korise together with evolution tak ami ki boli kom phylogenetic. Aristotle or Theophrastus, they have made a contribution depending on only morphological study. Clear? Okay. Next is he considered morphological characteristics for classification. Understood. He has written a book. Book khonor naam lagibo. There are so many books that we will have to study in a biological classification. A books or report question ahe je kunkhon book kune likhisile right when we talk about many books obviously books bilakor eta publication date thakibo na thake iman bor books likhise books bilakor publication date thakibo na thake so we have to remember many books but not many publication date gutei kitab bilakor publication date janibo na lage okol dukhon lage any idea okay এইবিলাক details আমি biological classification will do ha amar tate ki duta year lage 1753 or 1758 right these are the only two publication dates we will talk about why only two because based on that we will know whether the plant has been given a scientific name or not right epo ami binomial nomenclature ami clear korim next is Theophrastus is considered as the father of botany right these are the important points you don't have your PDF you are new you do not get it in the group or what? You are not in the group. You are an 11th student. You did not get it. Okay. After the class, just meet me, okay? Aru 11 or kunba asa niki? Baki buto no hoy no? Are you understanding? Because I am not going to write anything in the class because we have already given the PDF, right? You just understand the concept and then you match it with the PDF. Okay. Next is father of Indian botany. Very important question is asked. It is William Roxburgh. WILLIAM It is William Roxburgh. So, ekhini asal introduction about the scientist. Next is since we are talking about living, no life puli koa loge je life ki hoy eta reaction. A reaction to jar thake that is called as living. Whenever we talk about living, we also think about non-living also, right? There is a basic difference or there are many differences between living and non-living. It's very clear. Je ami kuntu bostu living kom, kuntu bostu non-living kom, everyone has an idea, right? So living or non-living or difference to bahut ase, kintu similarity ase nai. Living things or non-living things, differences there are so many. But are there any similarities between living and non-living? Obviously, there are similarities. What is the similarity? Two of the points that is written in your PDF. First key, both of them are made up of the same basic constituents, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, right? The second point is they are subjected to the same physical or laws like gravity. At a living being tolle ahibo, at a non-living being tolle ahibo. They are exposed to gravity, magnetism, right, or magnetic field. So these are certain physical forces to which both the living and the non-living is subjected. So these are the two similarities that we talk about in general. But we are yeah, radiation also. But we radiation hetu okoman vary koribo. Tamane kune radiation capacity to basically absorb koribo, kune komke absorb koribo. Kintu both of them are subjected. Right? Okay. So apart from the similarities, now we have to talk about the differences. Differences boli kole there are so many characteristics, right? In your PDF, there are certain points that are written. Presence of protoplasm, cellular organization, nutrition, metabolism, growth and reproduction and response. Ebila characteristics ami kot dekha pao, living or dekha pao, and non-living or dekha pao. In general, it is the characteristic of living. Tar bhitorot, what is the most important characteristic that distinguishes a living and a non-living? Presence of protoplasm, right? Eta cellot jedi protoplasm ase, তেতিয়াহে সেই সেলটোক আমি লিভিং বুলি কনসিডাৰ কৰিব পাৰো যদি protoplasm নাই sometimes it might happen that inside the cell the protoplasm content is almost nil due to certain types of deposition. Have you heard something called as a dead cell? Right? Soap cells to living no hoy no kisumanok dead cell buliu ko. What is the basic difference between a living cell and a dead cell? Protoplasm. Jedi protoplasm ase it is considered as a living. If it's absent then it's considered as a dead cell. Eta cellor pura protoplasm to keneke naikia hoi jay. How does the protoplasm vanishes from a cell? Generally, it is the contribution of the waste materials that are deposited inside the cell. Right? Eta cell ase tat jodi waste materials deposit hoi goi thake. Eta homoyot ki hobo the contents of the protoplasm will get minimized and almost zero. And at that time, the cell would be considered as a dead cell. Give me an example of a dead cell. Sclerenchyma. Very good. So that's an example of a dead cell. Tate ki hoy cell to bhitor kiba hor deposition thake. Kihor deposition asile? Lignin deposition. Right? Okay. So presence of protoplasm is the most important feature of a living cell. Now, talking about protoplasm, you have heard two words, eta protoplasm, eta cytoplasm, right? Cells, obviously details is something that we are going to do in the chapter called as cell unit of life, right? Kintu jehetu protoplasm word is something that we are talking about. I think you have come across the word called as cytoplasm also. So what is the difference between protoplasm and cytoplasm? First, protoplasm ki hoy? Something like that. So in that chapter moi ekhon chart di dim cell jeti ami korim ekhon chart dim he chart konot birat clear hoy jabo je protoplast ki protoplasm ki cytoplasm ki cytoplast ki cytosol ki, right? So ekhini details ami hetu chapter out korim. As of now, protoplasm is nothing but the liquid component inside the cell wall, cell membrane. Ekhini bhitorot that gel-like substance is called as what? Protoplasm. Cytoplasm ki hoy je without the nucleus and the cell membrane. Gutekhini contents ase khali ki nai cell membrane khon jodi tumi gusai dia eta cell loba tar cell membrane khon tumi artificially gusai dila. Eta cell loisa tar nucleus to tumi artificially gusai dila. So the content that is in your hand is called as cytoplasm. Ami pisot korim ebilak details, right? Okay. Now next, talking about protoplasm, a statement is given in your PDF. There was a scientist called as Huxley. What did he say? He said that protoplasm is the physical basis of life, right? So question keneke ahe, who gave this statement? So name of the scientist important. Physical basis of life buli kune koisile? Physical basis of life buli Huxley koisile. Clear? Okay. Next, characteristic of living organisms. There are so many characteristics. Now we have written almost 12 characteristics between living and non-living. Right? Kintu NCERT book konot okol 5ta characteristic dia ase between living and non-living, right? We have to study in details only about the 5, but we have to know apart from 5 aru kisuman characteristics ase junbilake living or non-living or differentiate kore. For example, if you are talking about definite size and shape, living beings or thake ne non-living beings or thake? It is always living. A human being always look like that only. He might okoman difference hobo pare. Someone might be a little bit fat, someone might be a little bit thinner. Okoman ukho hobo, okoman sapor hobo. That's okay. But basically, human being buli kwa loge we have an idea how does the human being look like, right? So definite shape and size obviously is a characteristic of living. And if you're talking about non-living, if you're talking about the rock to ekebare iman okomani eta pathor hobo pare, bahut dangor mountain ekhono hobo pare, right? So ultimately what we conclude that to have a definite shape and size is obviously a characteristic of a living organism. Next is organization. Talking about organization, what we understand is we are talking about that arrangement of cells into tissues into organ system, and ultimately that organism. Enukwa dhoroner organization ami kot dekha pam? Obviously living ot dekha pam, right? Growth and development. Talking about growth and development, in general, normal manu ejonok jodi hudha growth kar thake? Living or growth thake na non-living or growth thake? In general conditions, manhe ki kobo? So living e grow kore, non-living e grow nokore. We have never seen a table growing. So obviously the non-living doesn't grow. But from botany side of view, we'll have a discussion about this, right? So growth hole is a living hobo, not necessary, because we have seen non-living things also growing, right? We'll talk about it later. Next is reproduction. Again, reproduce kune kore. Living organisms only reproduce. Non-living things do not reproduce. But in spite of that, you cannot say যে এটা organisme reproduce কৰিছে আৰু এটা organisme reproduce নাই কৰা. যোনটো organism reproduce নাই কৰা, you cannot consider that organism to be a non-living organism. Are you understanding? Reproduction is a characteristic of living organisms. Does that mean the organism who does not reproduce is non-living? No, right? So we'll be talking about that. Next is metabolism. Metabolism ki hoy nothing but the reactions that are going inside. When we talk about reactions, we use two words, anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism ki bostu, catabolism ki bostu. কিছুমান ৰিয়াকশ্যনছৰ কাৰণে কিবা কিবি বস্তু ফৰ্ম কৰে, right? Some reactions are responsible for the formation of certain things and some reactions are responsible for the breakdown of certain things, right? যদি এটা ৰিয়াকশ্যনত কিবা কিবি বস্তু ফৰ্ম কৰিছে, that is what is called as what? Anabolic reaction. And suppose something gets broken down, that is called as a catabolic reaction. Give me one example of an anabolic reaction, one example of a catabolic reaction. Photosynthesis, respiration. Photosynthesis ki hoy? Anabolic ne catabolic? It is obviously anabolic because the food gets prepared, right? And if you are talking about respiration, what exactly happens in respiration? Respiration ot ki hoy? Eta sentence ot jodi koa respiration ot ki hoy? Photosynthesis jenike food to form kore. Respiration ot ki hoy? Food to break down hoy. The glucose get broken down. I think you remember glycolysis and all those stuffs, right? So since it gets broken down, so it is called as catabolic. Catabolic reaction does not mean যে কিবা কিবি form নকৰিব. Obviously form কৰিব. When you are respiring, when respiration or cellular respiration occurs inside a cell, when the food is getting broken down, obviously কিছুমান byproduct to form কৰে ন? কি byproduct form কৰে? ATP form কৰে, carbon dioxide form কৰে, water form কৰে, right? So এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ reactions বিলাকক আমি redox বুলিও ক'ব পাৰিম. দুইটা হৈ থাকে. Right? কিন্তু basically respiration is an example of catabolic কাৰণ main factor ki je food to bhangi jai. Clear? So the sum total of all these reactions na inside a body of an organism is called as what? Metabolism. Next is we have homeostasis. Homeostasis, organism and population, at least we know, right? Homeostasis mane ki to maintain a balance within the organism is called as homeostasis. Balance means we are the best example, mammals are the best example who shows homeostasis. We do not change with the environmental condition. When the environment is very hot, we do not become hot. Neither we become cold together along with the environment. Since we can maintain a constant body temperature, this is what is called as balancing or homeostasis. Who has this property? It is only the living beings that has. Living beings boli koleo okoman bhulobo kyo a specific type of living beings bilakor he homeostasis dekhai. Plants bilako living beings hoy tahate homeostasis dekhai jano ne dekhai, right? Okay, next we have consciousness. Obviously consciousness is a pure characteristic of living organism. Healing and repairing kiba eta duf palu, we got an injury, আমি ৰিপেয়াৰ কৰোঁ নে নকৰোঁ, নিজে নিজে আমাৰ চেলছবিলাক ৰিপেয়াৰ কৰে. So obviously a characteristic of living organisms. Next is excretion, adaptation, evolution and death. These are all characteristics of a living organism. But as I said, according to the NCERT, you have to talk about only 5 of them. What are the 5 characteristics? Growth, reproduction, metabolism, cellular structure and consciousness. ইয়াৰ পৰা question কি আহে? First point পৰা question আহে. Out of these 5, defining character of living kuntu or non-defining character of living kuntu. Okay, talking about characteristics of living, these are the 5 characteristics that you have to study, that is given in your NCERT book. When you study about these characteristics, আমি দুটা word পঢ়িব লাগিব. এটা হল defining, এটা হল not defining. First, you need to understand the meaning. Defining mane ki, not defining mane ki. Defining, I think you have heard this sentence, no? Living words jodi porisa, that to oftenly we hear growth is not a defining characteristic of living. It a not defining word to meaning ki. Defining or not defining, ekdom simple meaning ki, ekdom unique to the living. Okol living beings hote jodi dekha pao, tetal tak ami ki boli kom defining. Not defining, duitate dekha pao. Is it clear? What about the online students? Is it clear? Defining, non-defining, বুজিছো no? Okay. So out of these 5, growth and reproduction, not defining, metabolism, cellular organization and consciousness, obviously defining. কেতিয়াবা কোৱেশ্চনটো কি আহে যে কোনটো ডিফাইনিং কোনটো নট ডিফাইনিং টু কোৱেশ্চনটো আহিবই তাৰ উপৰি আউট অফ দ্য 3 ডিফাইনিং ক্যাৰেক্টাৰ্স সবতছে ইম্পৰ্টেন্ট ডিফাইনিং ক্যাৰেক্টাৰ কোনটো হেতুৰ ওপৰতো কোৱেশ্চন আহে ডিফাইনিং কেইটা আছে তিনটা আছে consciousness, metabolism and cellular structure. So tar bitorat sobotse important defining character kuntu consciousness. Aru ketiaba ki thake consciousness thakibo tar tolot option tot response to stimuli buliu thakibo, right? So at that time the answer would be response to stimuli, right? Stimulation bahiro environmental factors or logot kune heri koribo ketiaba okon complicated ke bostu tu di die. So response to stimuli, response to environmental factors is the basic and the most important characteristic of a living organism. Aru jedi hetu option nai tithale consciousness thakibo, consciousness would be the correct answer. So ketiaba according to the question options bilak okman change hobo pare. And ei bostu tur idea ketia paba once you complete this chapter and you go for MCQs. কিতাপ বিলাকত MCQs চাবা তাত কেনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ কোৱেশ্চনছ আহিছে then you will have an idea. Okay? Okay, after that definite shape and size we have already talked about, organization we have talked about. We will start with the first one that is called as growth, right? So NCERT bookor first characteristic ki dia ase growth. Growth boli kole what is growth? Eta organism grow korise tar mane ki? Hokot hoy goise, dangor hoy goise, dighol hoy goise, right? So it is nothing but increase. Increase in what? Increase in size, increase in mass, increase in height, right? All these are characteristics of growth. Jedi okoman kiba ta increase hoise ami ki boli kom growth hoise boli kom, right? So increase of mass and overall increase is called as growth. Yate question ki important, what is the twin characters of growth? Right? PDF or dia ase swa increase in mass and increase in number is considered as the twin characters of growth. Etor upor bahut question ahe. Increase in mass is also growth, increase in number is also growth. Twin character mane ki? Duita eke, right? Ki duta eke? Duta statement that has the same meaning. Increase in mass, if an organism increases its mass tetia ami kom the organism is growing. Eta organism jodi increase in number tetia hole ami kintu ki kom it is growing. Now increase in number a statement to kun bilak organisms or karone ami apply koru. Are you understanding? What I was saying was increase in number is also considered as growth. Does that mean etia moi okole asu aru tinta sarita mur logot ekelege ase number to increase korilei? Ete human beings moi keita asu in this podium 1. If I call all of you tetiao to number to increase koribo. Does that mean I am growing? Obviously not. So increase in growth in case of mass we understand number increase korile growth hua boli kak koi it is only considered for unicellular organisms. And the best example of unicellular we can consider bacteria as the best example. Eta bacteria grow korise boli kole what you understand? Eta baby grow korise. We understand. The baby asile baby to okoman child hoise, child to adult hoise. That is what is called as growth. If I say a bacteria is growing, bacteria to iman horu asil, tase iman dangor hol, tase iman dangor hol, tase iman dangor hol. Hetu niki? Yeah. Buji paisa ne? Yeah, it is nothing but cell division. Right? You have one bacteria, the one bacteria divided and form two bacteria, dutar pra sarita hol, saritar pra atta hol, attar pra 16ta hol. So this is what is called as growth in case of unicellular organisms, right? Okay. So increase in dry weight, increase in mass, increase in the number of individuals. Increase in mass we understand. Increase in mass boli kole it is nothing but ekdam commonly we are talking about the weight. Right? Eta baby jibano weight hobo, eta child or obviously weight to besi hobo, right? Mass to ami weight basically consider koribo paro. Next is increase in number. We have already said this is nothing but cell division. We have a point called as increase in dry weight, right? Eta organism or grow hoisen nai ba growth hoisen nai we can consider dry weight as a factor. right? Now what is dry weight? Generally dry weight is considered as a feature for plants, right? Plants bilakor growth hoise nai, edal mango tree is a huge tree, he plant dal grow korise nai, tumi jukhi chabo pariba niki? So in that case we can also go for dry weight. How do we go? Edal mango planter, for example, if you are taking that plant as an example, horute jiman gita leaves thakibo, maybe as years passes by the number of leaves will keep on increasing, right? So what we can do is we can count the weight of the leaves. Jedi kom ase tetia ami kom horu hoi ase, jetia besi hoise tetia ami kom je besi hoise. Kyo besi hol? Karon leaves besi hoise. Leaves ketia besi hoise? Jetia hi matured hoise, right? And now what is dry weight? We have two terms, one is called as fresh weight and the other is called as a dry weight. What is fresh weight? Adult plant uthaba, uthai pelai directly tak jukhiba, you will weigh it in a weigh scale, that is what is called as fresh weight. Dry weight, as the term suggests, what we have to do, ami sun dry koribo lagibo ba tumi machine ot di water content to naikia koribo lagibo, karon protect to cell ot ki thake, water content thake, right? Jedi water content or hote if you weigh, that is called as fresh weight. Jedi dry kori pelai weight kora tetal tak ki boli kom? Dry weight. So in certain types, for example, especially in plants, dry weight measurement is also considered to see whether growth has taken place or not. Oh, dangor tree bilakot to maximum dry weight ot ami leaves bilak collect koribo parim. Leaves bilak collect koribo parim, right? So any to a huge mango tree eral to tumi weigh koribo nwara, right? That is the way. Okay, next. What is growth? Growth is a irreversible and permanent change. Permanent change we understand. Irreversible mane ever growth hole it cannot come back, right? So we are using a word called as irreversible and a permanent change. Next, growth is the result of metabolism, right? Amar body bhitorot ami jedi grow kori aso, grow kiho karone kori aso, kiba kibi reasonor karone grow kori aso. What is the reason? Nothing but the reactions that are going inside. When we talk about reaction, anabolism or catabolism, jedi amar body bhitorot anabolism besike hoy tetia hole ami grow korim. Jedi amar body bhitorot catabolism besike hoy tetia amar ki hobo? Degrowth hobo. Kisman manu degrowth hoy noy, they become weaker. That does not mean that a human being turns itself to a baby. Tenekato no hoy no, kintu degrowth hoy. Jiman grow koribo lagisil, jiman healthy hobo lagisil, himan healthy no hoy. We are shrinking it down. What is the reason behind? Because catabolism is more as compared to anabolism. So we have a term called as degrowth. What leads to degrowth? Hetu report question ahibo pore. So more of catabolism, less of anabolism leads to degrowth. Clear? Okay, growth occurs when anabolism exceeds catabolism, we understand. Unicellular organisms grow by cell division. We have given the example of bacteria. It is synonymous to reproduction. Tar mane unicellular organisms bilakor karone growth and reproduction is the same. But in case of higher organisms, growth is different, reproduction is different. For us, human beings or growth hoise ar human being to reproduce korise duita eketa bostu niki nohoy kintu unicellular organisms, especially if you are talking about bacteria, a bacteria is reproducing, means what? It is increasing its number, right? Cell division. A bacteria is growing, means what? It's increasing its number. So in case of unicellular organisms, growth or reproduction has the same meaning, and so we are using the word called as synonym. Clear? Next, in majority of the higher plants and animals, growth and reproduction are okay. You have a word called as mutually exclusive. So eta paragraph of mutually exclusive events boli word ase. Hey duta word birat important. Mutually exclusive event ne mutually inclusive events, right? Exclusive aru inclusive mane kiba eta bostu eke, that is inclusive. Duita bostu beleg, that is called as exclusive, right? So ki likhe in majority of the higher plants and animals, growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events. Mane in higher organisms both the process are different. কিন্তু in case of unicellular organisms দুইটাই একে সেই কাৰণে আমি word কি use কৰিছো inclusive events so question আহে growth and reproduction is considered as an inclusive event for unicellular organisms exclusive event for higher organisms clear okay now we have to talk about that word defining ne not defining ami ki pori asu je growth as a characteristic and in general we know that growth takes place only in case of living beings but we know that non-living beings also grow we have seen the growth of a mountains bila grow kore dangor hoy goi thake rock kisuman grow kore dangor hoy goi thake if you are talking about a heap of sand balir dome eta ঠিক আছে এটা জায়গাত তুমি বালিৰ ডোম থৈছা বহুত সময়ৰ পিছত what happens some certain types of soil particles could be carried by the wind and deposited there ultimately what happened the heap will become bigger and bigger হয় না বালিৰ ডোম এটা আছিল সৰুকে আছিল ৰাইট তাত যদি কোবাৰ পৰা বেলেগ বালি আনি পেলাই থৈ দিও সেই হিপটো ডাঙৰ হৈ গৈছে নাই সেই ডাঙৰ হোৱাটোকে গ্ৰোথ বুলি কয় নকয় right so ultimately growth is something that is seen both in case of living and also in case of non living so it is not considered as a defining characteristic of living question ahe duta question first is growth a defining character ne non defining character it's a non defining character of living second why is growth considered as a non defining character because non living things also grow clear so duta sentence we need to study so non defining important point next growth or logot aru ketaman word associated intrinsic growth and extrinsic growth what is intrinsic internal growth if the organism grow from inside that is called as intrinsic if a thing or a substance grow from outside that is called as extrinsic moi etia he je balir dome tur kotha kolu bali khini asile he bahiror pora hi dangor hoy goi ase so that is what is called as external growth extrinsic growth is a characteristic of living and non-living it's non-living and intrinsic growth obviously it's a characteristic of living because we know we grow from inside our cells bilak dangor hoy ami dangor hou right so yate question to ki dise is intrinsic growth a defining characteristic of growth in living duta question first question is growth a defining characteristic of living yes or no no is intrinsic growth a defining characteristic of living yes so read the question properly ঠিক আছে growth to defining নহয় কিন্তু intrinsic growth to defining কারণ internal growth অকল living organisms হতে আমি দেখা পাও clear so that is the reason I have given the question another two terms associated with growth determinate growth and non determinate growth or limited growth and unlimited growth limited growth ami kar tat dekha pam in case of animals right we grow for only a certain period of time and that is what is called as limited or determinate growth but if you are talking about plants tahate ki kore throughout their lifetime they keep on growing that is what is called as unlimited or non determinate right so limited or determinate obviously by animals indeterminate growth or unlimited growth is in case of plants etia yate aru eta kotha ase we know in case of plants what happens the plant keeps on growing until the time it dies right so if the plant keeps on growing and growing and growing so obviously he dangor hoy goi thakibo na thake gosdal dangor hoy goi thakibo etia hey plant dalor if you talk about a specific part you are talking about a leaf is also a part of the plant hey leaf to ki growth hoy ase হি আজি ম্যাঙ্গো গছডালৰ তুমি যোনটো লিফ দেখা পাইছা আজি ইমান দেখা পাইছা কাইলে ইমান দেখা পাবা পৰহিলে ইমান দেখা পাবা তেনেকৈ ডাঙৰ হৈ গৈ থাকিব নেকি or you can take the example of the fruit also if you are talking about the mango fruit specific fruit at a specific size থাকে that does not mean that if years passes by ডাঙৰ হৈ যায় কোকোনাট এটা গছত আছে 3 বছৰ হলে ইমান সৰু 5 বছৰ হলে ইমান ডাঙৰ তেনেকুৱা নেকি নাই তো what does that indicate it indicates that the unlimited growth is a characteristic of plants but you have to be specific which part of the plant depending on parts of a plant dale determinate growth dekhabo indeterminate growth dekhabo if you are talking about leaves if you are talking about fruits if you are talking about flowers ebilak bostu shape size almost constant তাহাতে সদায় একদম মৰালৈকে গ্ৰো কৰি কৰি ডাঙৰ হৈ হৈ গৈ নাথাকে তেতিয়া হলে indeterminate growth কোনটো part of the plant body আমি দেখা পাওঁ shoot apex and root apex it is only the apex of a plant that grows indefinitely if you are talking about a specific part will always have a determinate growth clear নহয় গ্ৰো কৰি থাকে কাৰণ root tip আৰু shoot tip to he grow কৰি থাকিব কিন্তু it's like the growth is slow সেইকাৰণে আমি পটককে আৰু প্লাস তাহাত ইমান উখ গছ হয় ন আমাৰ আইডিয়াই নহয় যে হি কিমান উখ হৈছে ৰাইট সব গছৰ বুলি ক'লে actually to if it is a plant তেতিয়াহলে root apex shoot apex to grow কৰিবই লাগিব কিন্তু আমি দেখা কি অনুভৱ কিছুমান গছ for example if you are talking about a rice plant rice ডালটো আমি এবছৰ পিছত কাটিয়ে দিওঁ চাবলৈ সময়ে নাই হয়নে সো থাকিলে বা সুগাৰ কেন এডাল তুমি থৈ দিবা হি উখ হৈ গৈ থাকিব right so অকমান হলেও as it matures the amount of cell division will keep on reducing যিমান reduce কৰে তাৰ growth to কমি যাব that does not mean growth to stop হয় কিন্তু growth কৰিয়ে থাকিব apex কিটাই right so these are the points that are important please read the paragraph properly so growth or I think this is the information what we have learned what is growth it's a reaction permanent irreversible defining character and not defining character of living non-defining character of a living intrinsic extrinsic determinant non-determinant intrinsic growth defining characteristic of living clear kiba doubts asel niki yeah please say tuma matto okoman phatise aru ebar koa na to koi dibo lage no so okay anabolism aru catabolism details to tumak rakesh sir porhabo ke chemistry class ot hoy no hoy so ebu reaction to rakesh sir department moi ki koiso it's just the meaning eta reaction ok anabolic reaction buli ketia kom jetia he reaction to karone kiba eta product form kore for example photosynthesis ki hoy photosynthesis eta reaction a reaction to karone ki produce hoy plant body dalot food produce hoy so jihetu food produce hoise a producing reaction to kami ki buli kom anabolic reaction buli kom similarly respiration of ki hoy that the food that is present inside the cell gets broken down is a broken down bostu eta se bhangi goise bhangi jua reactions bilakok ami ki buli kom catabolic so amar body ভিতৰত দুটা টাইপ অফ ৰিঅ্যাকশন চলি থাকে anabolic reaction চলি থাকে catabolic reaction চলি থাকে যদি বেসিকে catabolic reaction হয় তেতিয়াহলে আমাৰ growth যিমান হ'ব লাগে হিমান growth নহয় so that is what is called as a degrowth বুজি পাইছনে okay any more doubts inclusive or exclusive events or exclusive events দুইটা বস্তু আমি কম্পেয়াৰ কৰিছো দুইটাৰ একেটা মিনিং নে দুইটা বেলেগ প্ৰসেস যদি একেটা হয় আমি ইনক্লুসিভ তাৰ মানে ৰিপ্ৰডাকচনৰ ভিতৰতে গ্ৰোথটো ইনক্লুড হৈ আছে তাৰ মানে একেটাই বস্তু কিন্তু ৰিপ্ৰডাকচনটো বেলেগ গ্ৰোথটো বেলেগ ইটোৰ ভিতৰতটো নাই ইটোৰ মিনিং গিটাও বেলেগ তেতিয়াহলে আমি এক্সক্লুসিভ হ'ম হ'ব কিন্তু ইউনিসেলুলাৰ অৰ্গানিজমছৰ কি হয় ৰিপ্ৰডাকচন মানে জি গ্ৰোথ মানেও হেয়াই ৰাইট clear sobore so that was all about growth and next we go to the next one that is reproduction obviously what is reproduction we understand increasing the number by like forms is called as reproduction types of reproduction kiman types thake two types of reproduction sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction there is also another type of reproduction that is called as vegetative reproduction agor kitab bilake three types of reproduction buli koisile sexual reproduction asexual reproduction and vegetative reproduction but now NCERT has put the vegetative reproduction under asexual means of reproduction so we have two types of reproduction talking about sexual reproduction the basic characteristic is that you need to have gametes থাকিব লাগিব form কৰিব লাগিব fusion হ'ব লাগিব তেতিয়া হে sexual reproduction will take place If the organism does not produce gametes, then obviously it will not undergo sexual reproduction. Second point, sexual reproduction is generally a characteristic of higher organisms. Lower organisms bilake generally sexual reproduce nokore, right? Third point, if you are talking about the differences sexual and asexual, ami jeta reproduction porim tetia ami in the form of a chart will discuss, right? Types of sexual reproduction, types of asexual reproduction, etc. etc. In this class, এইটো চ্যাপ্টাৰত কি আছে asexual reproduction অকমান ইনফৰমেশন আছে asexual reproduction বুলি ক'লে we remember our term that is called as biparental ne uniparental it is uniparental our sexual reproduction obviously biparental right so uniparental you do not need another one karu help নোহোৱাকে reproduce কৰিব পাৰে types of asexual reproduction যোনগিটা দিয়া আছে 5 types হেগিটা তোমালকে পঢ়িবা vegetative reproduction too is a type of asexual kintu sub or 6 type dia ase kintu actually sabole gole vegetative to asexual ote pore thik ase we can say that there are 6 types of asexual reproduction right so out of the 6 types or 5 types binary fission boli kole the best example is bacteria what is binary fission Ako, there is a chapter called as Reproduction in Organisms in your class 12, the first chapter, right? Tat ami eblak details. Fission, types of binary fission, sorry, budding, eblak ami tathe details of porim. As of now, as I said before, no, this is a chapter that has informations about all the chapters, right? So, ekini okoman dise, kintu ekini purao question ahe. Question ki ahe? Dash reproduces by budding. Best example, yeast. Right? Dash reproduces by binary fission, bacteria, right? Regeneration kar hoy. So, ekita jungita example diya ase, ekini ami bhalke poribo laibo. So, binary fission in case of bacteria, spore formation. Spore formation is a characteristic of many organisms. Lower organisms bilake, bahut organisms e spore form kore. If you are talking about bacteria also, bacteria to ami kisuman spore production dekha pao, right? If you are talking about algae to ami spore production dekha pao kintu spore as the major means of reproduction kot dekha pam in case of fungi right maximum fungi bilake keneke reproduce kore with the help of different types of spores biological classification of fungi part 2 ase and we'll talk about it at that right I think you all have heard certain words called as sporangiospores right then you have heard something chlamydospores right conidia penicillium orjuntu conidia ascospores basidiospores right is spores to main means of reproduction kar fungi bilakor so spores or best example ami ki disu fungi that does not mean algae spores produce nokore ba bacteria spores produce nokore we will see bacteria ami ki dekha pam je unfavorable conditions etia hoy eta bacteria spore form koribo pare favorable condition of bacteria keneke reproduce kore binary fission di unfavorable condition of they have to do something to survive right so what they do is they will form a spore that is called as an endospore what is endospore biological classification we'll discuss clear next is budding to always the best example is yeast or what a question aaya hydra and yeast right fragmentation what is fragmentation eta plant body fragments per section hoy and each and every fragment is responsible or is capable of producing a new plant that is called as fragmentation second point fragmentation is seen in which type of organisms kenuka dhoroner forms ot ami fragmentation dekha pam filamentous right that is a word that you need to remember filamentous algae he fragmentation korabo colonial algae kintu nokorai if you are talking about volvox e fragmentation nokore spirogyra kintu fragmentation koribo right so remember the word called as filamentous all filamentous forms maximum they can undergo fragmentation second point is when we are talking about reproduction another point je lower organisms bilake more than one method of reproduction thake kintu if you are talking about higher organisms for example for us amar etai mode of reproduction right sexual reproduction ei hoy right kintu lower organisms for example algae hobo pare kisuman lower algae to ase nai jano so lower algae amar dekha pam je vegetative reproduction hoise asexual reproduction hoise sexual reproduction hoise so what we can conclude Characteristic of lower organisms, they have more than one means of reproduction. Higher organisms bilak, they are confined to only one means of reproduction. Clear? Okay. Next is number 4, we have regeneration. What is regeneration? Eta organism asil, he organism to pra aru eta organism hoi gol. That is called as regeneration, right? Regeneration, best example in your book is given planaria, right? So we'll be confined with that. Kintu eta added information tumalokor PDF or diya ase. We have 2 types of regeneration. One is called as epimorphosis and the other is called as morpholexis. What is the difference? Sentence kita porhasun, buji paisan nai? Jetia ami regeneration or kotha ko, the best common example that comes to our mind is lizard, right? What does a lizard do? Tar nails dal ba tail dal ki kore? Kati dibo pare, right? Jedi eta lizard or he nails dal kati gol, he lizard to ako tail form koribo ne nokore? Koribo. That is one type. Kintu he tail dalor pura, the tail that was detached from the body, he tail dalor pura ako lizard eta form koribo niki? নকৰে কিন্তু কিছুমান অৰ্গানিজমছত কি হয় যে দুটা পাৰ্টত যদি ভাগ হৈ যায় দুইটা পাৰ্টৰ পৰা নতুন নতুন অৰ্গানিজমছ ফৰ্ম কৰিব পাৰে that is seen in case of planaria. What happens? Planaria is nothing but a worm, right? So if you are talking about something like this, right? Planaria to ki koribo kiba hot eta rock eta lagi thakibo. So if it wants to move forward ketiaba ki hoy yate bhangi jay, it gets snap kora pisot kenuka form korile, enuka eta form korile, এইটো পাৰ্টৰ পৰা আকৌ নিউ প্লেনেৰিয়া এটা ফৰ্ম কৰিব, এইটো পাৰ্টৰ পৰা আকৌ নিউ প্লেনেৰিয়া এটা ফৰ্ম কৰিব। যদি এইটো হয় তেতিয়াহ'লে তাক আমি কি বুলি কৈছোঁ? এপিমৰ্ফোচিছ নে মৰ্ফোলেক্সিছ? ইট ইজ কল্ড এজ মৰ্ফোলেক্সিছ। কিন্তু লিজাৰ্ডৰ টেইলডালৰ পৰা আৰু এটা লিজাৰ্ড ফৰ্ম নকৰে। that type of a regeneration is called as ki epimorphosis. Clear? Iman details aha nai question. What you need to remember? The best example of regeneration. Right? Okay. So the next point is about the defining and not defining. As we said, protective characteristic, defining and not defining we need to study. Growth we have studied. Reproduction is a defining character. No, it's a non-defining character. It is a non-defining character. The second question is, why is reproduction considered as a non-defining characteristic of living? Karon, all organisms that do not reproduce are not non-living. Eta human being ase he reproduce koribo par nai, tak ami non-living kom niki? There are so many sterile human beings, there are so many sterile animals, no? Not necessarily that everyone is fertile. So organism eta produce koribo par nai, tar mane organism to non-living niki? Human being a baby produce koribo par nai, human being to non-living hoi jabo niki? No hoy. So that is the explanation why it is considered as a non-defining. So growth is also a non-defining character, reproduction is also a non-defining character, but the explanation is different. Why is growth a non-defining character? Because growth is seen also in case of non-living. Why is reproduction a non-living characteristic? Tat jodi ami likho because reproduction is also seen in non-living, hobo niki? No hoy. Kihor karone? What will be the answer? Organisms that do not reproduce are also living. So reproduction is not a defining characteristic of living. Is the point clear? Kihor? Sterile human beings. Mule, M-U-L-E. Mules are no, horse and donkey, right? Horse and donkey jodi cross koro baby to ki boli kom mule. Mule to reproduce koribo paribo nware. Kintu later we will study যে কিছুমান এনেকুৱা দুটা বেলেগ বেলেগ স্পিচিজ কম্বাইন কৰিও আমি যদি অফস্প্ৰিং প্ৰডিউস কৰো কিছুমান অফস্প্ৰিংস কিন্তু ফাৰ্টাইলও হয় লাইগাৰ টাইগাৰ এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ কিছুমান এক্সাম্পলছ আছে লায়ন আৰু টাইগাৰ দুটা কম্বাইন কৰি তুমি প্ৰডিউস কৰিলা এনেটো ইজ নট পসিবল কৰিব নেকি লায়ন এটা টাইগাৰ লগত মিটিং অবভিয়াসলি নকৰে বাট আন্ডাৰ আৰ্টিফিশিয়াল কন্ডিশনস উই ক্যান ডু দ্যাট ৰাইট সো এটা লায়ন ললো এটা টাইগাৰ ললো দুইটা ফাৰ্টিলাইজ কৰি পেলাই বেবি এটা প্ৰডিউস কৰিলো হে বেবিটো right? So it will be called as a liger or it will be called as a tiger depending on who the male is. Male to jodi lion hoy teta liger boli kom, male to jodi tiger hoy teta tiger boli kom, offspring to, right? So liger or tiger offspring fertile hoy kintu mule to sterile. Hini sterile. Hini aru mule dia ase swa. Hini aru mule to hetue difference. Male horse ne female horse. Right? We'll talk about it later. Okay. So this was all about reproduction. Two of the characteristics we have studied. Third is metabolism. Metabolism, we know that this is a defining characteristic of living. Metabolism or reactions core hoy or living organisms ote hoy. So question ahe, is metabolism a defining and not defining? It is a defining characteristic. When you are reading about metabolism, the last point, hey point about question ahe. Metabolism ki hoy? Eta reaction. So, eta organism or bhitorot jodi eta reaction choli ase, tetiahole he organism to kami ki boli consider korim? Living ne non living? Eta organism ase, organism or gar bhitorot reaction eta hoi ase. So he organism to living ne non living? Living, because reactions are taking place. So while we are talking about reactions, we have to talk about in vitro reactions also, right? Isolated reaction eta kotha poribo lagibo. Ta mane ki isolated mane ki? You take it away from the body of an organism. That is what is called as isolated. So we are discussing an example of an isolated reaction. Eta body ase, organism ase, he organism pora cell eta loisa, cell to tumi ki koriba eta test tube or bhitor thumai thoba. ঠিক আছে, এই সেলটোত আমি নিউট্রিয়েন্টস দিছো so that এই সেলটো ডিভাইড এন্ড রিডিভাইড কৰে, রাইট? প্ৰথমতে সেল এটা আছিল, তাত আমি যেতিয়া নিউট্রিয়েন্টস দিম তেতিয়ালে সেলটোৱে ডিভাইড কৰিব, তাৰপিছত দুটা হ'ব, চাৰিটা হ'ব, চাৰিটাৰ পৰা আঠটা হ'ব, ৰিঅ্যাকশনস হৈ থাকিব। সো এই সেটআপটো কি হৈ আছে? এটা ৰিঅ্যাকশন হৈ আছে। ৰিঅ্যাকশন হৈ আছে নাই? সেলটো ডিভাইড কৰি আছে, সেলটোৱে যে ডিভাইড কৰি আছে এটো ৰিঅ্যাকশন হয় নহয়, অবভিয়াসলি ৰিঅ্যাকশন হয়। সো আমি এইটো ক'ব পাৰো নেকি এই বস্তুটোৰ ভিতৰত যেহেতু ৰিঅ্যাকশন হৈ আছে, এই বস্তুটো লিভিং? কোৱেশ্চনটো বুজি পাইছা নাই? প্ৰথম স্টেটমেন্টটো মই কি ক'লো? What is the first statement that I said? I said that any organism that shows a reaction inside, that is a living thing, right? We have seen a structure that is a test tube. Inside the test tube also there is a reaction that is going on. Can we say the whole apparatus to be living? No. So isolated eneka reaction etat কি হ'ব? এটো বস্তু গোটেই বস্তুটোক আমি লিভিং বুলিও ক'ব নোৱাৰো, নন লিভিং বুলিও ক'ব নোৱাৰো। নন লিভিং কিয় ক'ব নোৱাৰো? বিকজ ৰিঅ্যাকশনস আর গোইং। লিভিং কিয় ক'ব নোৱাৰো? কাৰণ টেষ্ট টিউবটো লিভিং নহয়। সো ইন দিস কেস ইট ইজ এন এক্সাম্পল অফ বোথ লিভিং এন্ড নন লিভিং, বাট দ্য ৰিঅ্যাকশন ইজ অলওয়েজ লিভিং, রাইট? সেটআপটো কি হয়? এন্টায়ার সেটআপ নাইদার লিভিং নর নন লিভিং, বাট দ্য রিঅ্যাকশন ইজ লিভিং। ইজ দ্য পয়েন্ট আন্ডারস্টুড? Right? So hetu upor question ahe, an isolated metabolic reaction in a test tube is neither living nor isolated বুলি কোৱা লগে লগে isolate কৰি পেলাই তুমি কোট ৰিঅ্যাকশন কৰিছা সেই বস্তুটো কনসিডাৰ কৰিছো, গোটেই সেটআপটো apparatus তে apparatus যদি কৰা তেতিয়া হলে neither living nor non living, এই গোটেই সেটআপটো আমি কি বুলি কম? ৰিঅ্যাকশন এটাটো হৈয়ে আছে, right? কিন্তু অকল যদি স্পেসিফিকলি ৰিঅ্যাকশনটো কথা হুদা, ৰিঅ্যাকশনটো কি হ'ব? লিভিং হ'ব। And next is a defining characteristic of living. Next we have cellular respiration. Cellular respiration কবৰা আহি গ'ল। এনে as a whole লিখি দিছে ন? Okay, cellular respiration. So respiration obviously is a characteristic of living aru hetu aru pohabole kitu ase defining characteristic. Cellular respiration to hobo na lagisile organization ki likhise bhagwan jane. So it should, okay, cellular respiration likha ase, respiration word to kati pelai organization likhiba. We are talking about cellular organization and not cellular respiration. So cellular organization, obviously it's a defining characteristic of living. This organization is seen only in case of living beings. And finally we have consciousness. Consciousness is also a defining characteristic of living. Again, when you are talking about consciousness, a example to পঢ়িব লাগিব, a person in coma, right? Consciousness থাকিলে এটা organismক living বুলি কওঁ। কোমাত থাকা এটা patient consciousness নাই, does that mean the patient is non living? No, he is considered as living because his brain is still working, right? Artificial instruments e hok je no hok tar brain to work kori ase he karone ami non living kobo nwaro. So these were the characteristics, and out of the contents the first part we have completed. What is living, difference between living, non-living, similarities between living and non-living, characteristics of living, right? This is something that we have done. Next is we have biodiversity. Biodiversity PDF to swasun. What is biodiversity? Meaning to ki je পৃথিৱীখনত বহুত বেলেগ বেলেগ ধৰণৰ diverse forms of organisms are available, and that is what is called as biodiversity, right? And if you are talking about organisms, they are broadly divided into two types. Either it will be an animal or it will be a plant, right? So broadly divided দুবাৰ কৰিছে ইয়াতে question কি আহে, the number of known species, এটোৰ ওপৰতে question আহে, it is 1.7 million, right? So 1.7 million to 1.8 million, this is according to the NCERT. latest or মতে কিন্তু different হয়, কিন্তু যেহেতু NCERT 1.7 1.8 দিয়া আছে, we will be confined with this figure itself, right? Google যদি কৰা তুমি কিন্তু numbers বেছি, কাৰণ obviously এটো কত আগৰ information, right? এটাটো চেঞ্জ হৈছে, কিন্তু তথাপিও আমি NCERT is something that will be based, right? So what is the number of known species? 1.7 million, sometimes কি দিব পাৰে 1.8 million ও দিব পাৰে. Okay, out of this what is the number of animals and what is the number of plants? In numbers bilak birat important, right? You have 1.2 million animals and 0.5 million plants. Numbers please study. Out of the animal section, animals boli kole to bahut types of animals thake. Maximum kuntu type of animals dekha pao? Insects, right? And if you are talking about plants, so first ko yate to ki dia ase NCERT book of fungi plant niki. যদি fungi plant hole heten to plant kingdom ot thakile heten. Fungi is totally a different kingdom, but in spite of that, since it's given in the NCERT, we'll be talking about it. If in the option fungi option to নাই, তেতিয়া হলে highest plant kuntu group? Angiosperms. আর তাতো যদি details ot দিয়ে dicots ne monocots? Obviously monocots. Clear? Next is the pie chart that is given. Diagram di dibo, pie chart gita identify koribo libo, kuntu section, kuntu animals denote kore, right? So if you are talking about invertebrates or you are talking about vertebrates, vertebrates bilak jiman bor vertebrate ase, so botse maximum ki ase? Fishes, right? Ar jiman bor invertebrate ase, so botse maximum ki ase? Insects, right? So duta pie chart dia ase, see the pie chart properly. And in the next page there is a pie chart of the plant kingdom, I think. Right? So maximum ki dekho ase fungi, jodi fungi na thake it will be angiosperms. So ekhini hol the basic point. Next part of the lesson ot ki ase? Asol word gita. Asol ki aru classification, taxonomy aru systematics, right? So classification, iman bilak organisms it is present in the world. So to know about those organisms, ami protectu organism bhalke study ketia koribo parim? Jetia properly tar information kini kobat pam, right? Properly arrange hoi thakibo lagibo all the information about that organism. This arrangement of all the information is nothing but classification. So why do you classify? To know the organism properly. Along with classification we have two words, systematics and taxonomy. Before starting these three topics, the first statement that you need to know is classification, taxonomy, aru systematics. All the three are synonyms. Is the statement understood? Classification ki hoy? Taxonomy hoy. Taxonomy ki hoy? Systematics hoy. Systematics ki hoy? Classification hoy. Classification ki hoy? Systematics hoy. So gutei tintare eketai meaning. Taxonomical study korisu mane ki je eta organism bhalke ami organize korisu. Systematic study korisu mane ki je eta organism ok ami bhalke organize korisu. We are doing a classification of an organism, means what? We are arranging that organism properly. So obviously the three words have the same meaning, right? Khali words bilak scientists bilake time to time change kori asile, right? So classification keta bojo class ase? Sare rosta. বিশখন পেজৰ দেখোন নহল গৈ আজি নে 20খন পেজ 5 মিনিটত কৈ দিও নেকি নালাগে যিমান ফাষ্ট কৰা সিমান ভাল হ'ব জানে নালাগে ক'লে কেনেকৈ হ'ব এইটোতো ফাৰ্ষ্ট চেপ্টাৰ এইটোতে যদি এনেকুৱা হালত বায়'লজিকেল ক্লাছিফিকেশ্যনত কি কৰিবা নৰ্মেলি বায়'লজিকেল ক্লাছিফিকেশ্যন যদি মই ৱৰ্ড কি ৱৰ্ড লিখি পেলাই পঢ়াব লাগে এমাহতকৈ বেছি লাগিছে ইউ ন' দেৰ আৰ এৰাউণ্ড 16 নে 17 লেকচাৰ্ছ নেকি নে তাতকৈ বেছি এটা চেপ্টাৰত biological classification অকল after that plant kingdom another 14 lectures morphology 16 মান আছে lectures so like you can very well মানে imagine the contents কিমান বেছি আছে right contents খিনি তো পঢ়িবই লাগিব I cannot be confined with only the NCERT অকল যদি NCERT পঢ়ি থৈ দিও তেতিয়াহ'লে questions কৰিব নোৱাৰিবা পাৰিবা কিন্তু ট্ৰিক কৰি দিলে নোৱাৰিবা নহয় contents কিন্তু আমি পঢ়িবই লাগিব right so similarly living world মই আজি এটা ক্লাছত শেষ কৰিব লাগিছিলে finished 15 minutes extra লৈ লও নেকি হা 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 গোটেই দিনটো বায়'লজি ল'লে কেইটা লেচন শেষ হ'ব নহয় অকল লিভিং ৱৰ্ল্ড এইটো চাব তাকে থাকি গ'ল ন বাকী নেক্সট ক্লাছ আমাৰ কেতিয়া আছে নেক্সট মৰ্নিং আজি Saturday no Monday we have that organism and population Tuesday we have morphology Wednesday we have living world তিনটা ক্লাছ নিম লিভিং ৱৰ্ল্ড নেক্সট ক্লাছ একদম ফাষ্ট পঢ়ি আহিবা দেই একদম ফাষ্ট যাম আৰু একো নুবুজাওঁ দেখিছোঁ বুজাবলৈ একো নাই ইয়াতে আজি ঘৰত গৈ পেলাই চিষ্টেমেটিক টেক্সনমি অ'কে আইল জাষ্ট গিভ ওৱান লাইন চোৱা ক্লাছিফিকেশ্যন টেক্সনমি চিষ্টেমেটিক্স কি ক'লোঁ যে গোটেইকেইটাৰ একেটাই মিনিং ক্লাছিফাই কিয় কৰোঁ এটা অৰ্গেনিজমৰ বিষয় জানিবলৈ টেক্সনমিকেল ষ্টাডি কিয় কৰোঁ to know about the organism systematical study কিয় কৰোঁ to know about the organism right there is one difference what is taxonomy and systematics এটা অৰ্গেনিজমৰ কথা ভালকৈ জানিব লাগিলে তাক প্ৰপাৰলি এৰেঞ্জ কৰিব লাগিব এটা প্ৰপাৰলি এৰেঞ্জ কৰা মানে কি চোৱা তোমালোকৰ এটা ৰুম আছে থাকে ইউ ষ্টে ইন আ পাৰ্টিকুলাৰ ৰুম সেই ৰুমটো লেতেৰাকৈ ৰাখিছা সেই ৰুমটোত মা আহি পেলাই কৈছে ৰুমটো চাফা কৰা ইউ হেভ টু ৱেজ অফ চাফা কৰিং ঠিক আছে এণ্ড হোৱাট আৰ দ্য টু ৱেজ অফ চাফা কৰিং কেনেকৈ চাফা কৰিবা ৰুমটো গোটেই প্ৰথমটোতো কাপোৰ চাপোৰ চব বিচনাতে পেলাই থৈ দিছে মা আহিছে আহি পেলাই কৈছে ৰুমটো চাফা কৰা কেনেকৈ চাফা কৰিবা দুটা ৱে আছে এটা গোটেই কাপোৰখিনি নি কাপবৰ্ডটোত ডাম কৰিলা তেতিয়া ৰুমটো চাফাই দেখিলে ৰাইট আৰু এটা কি যে প্ৰত্যেকটো কাপোৰ ধুনীয়াকৈ জাপি মেলি ধুনীয়াকৈ কাপবৰ্ডত এছাইন কৰা সেইটোতো চাফা দেখিলে চ' টেক্সনমি এণ্ড চিষ্টেমেটিক্স এক্সেক্টলি দ্য চেম যদি ভালকৈ কৰা taking into consideration each and every factor that is systematics as a whole kora taxonomy okay so please read that portion in your home and then we'll discuss it in the next class okay thank you for today online students kiba doubts asil niki okay today being the first class okoman hunkale we have completed or we have wind up next day pra okoman digholke porhim please study at home and then come thank you